can tell, said that you can tell. It always ends up to one thing, when I look and you're not there.
I really like the silence. But as Mikkel said, we're here to try to break the silence, and this is also what we tried to do with this campaign, a cinema campaign. First, before I start, from my side and from the side of World Food Programme, thank you so much to the organizers for making us part of Creative Mornings. We're really thrilled to be able to host one of the talks here in New York City, this beautiful building. And thank you for everyone who got up really early in the morning and came all the way out to Marmormolen. Much appreciated. And I hope when we finish the talk that you will want to hang around for another coffee, another croissant. There's definitely enough, and we don't really want any food waste. So please help yourselves to a nice and filling breakfast. This campaign just actually ran in movie theaters across more than 30 countries in the world. You might have seen it if you went to the movie theaters here in Denmark. It was part of the Dansk Reklamefilm was part of this collaboration that we had. So if you went to the movie theater, you might have seen it during the month of September, October, November. And it's the second time we run this campaign. I just want to say a bit about the background for having this campaign and wanting to break the silence is, what did I do? The background behind it is the brutal fact that every 10 seconds a child dies from hunger. And that sums up to more than 3 million children every year who dies from hunger. Complete unnecessary, because there is actually food enough for everyone in the world. It's not that we cannot produce enough food. Actually, we produce so much food that 1/3 is going to waste, which is like absurd when you think about that. Then 3 million children will die from hunger or diseases that are connected to malnutrition or undernutrition. Contrary to what you would think would be the normal, it should be headlines every single day, headlines in CNN and BBC and Berlingske Tidende and whatnot, because this is really brutal and awful. And the thing is, it happens kind of in silence. It happens every single day. It happens at a slower pace. It's not a tsunami. It's not an earthquake, which will attract headlines for a number of days or a number of weeks. But this is just happening every single day. So if I call a newspaper and I'm like, wouldn't you want to write about, hunger in the world, or the fact that so and so many children will have died just at the span of, our phone conversation? They're like, but what's the news? So unless it's really part of a major news story, it's not the news, which I think is really grotesque. And but also I'm a journalist by profession, so I of course know how it works. Brexit is much more important or interesting, or Trump, and these issues tend to get way down the agenda, unfortunately. So we have to find ways in the World Food Programme to try to break the silence, to make people aware of the issues that are in the world today still, in spite of all the progress. And we need to make people aware of also what are the tools, what can we do to fight it? What are the consequences, first and foremost, about having living in a world where 3 million children die every year from hunger? And then also, what is it that we do as the World Food Programme, other partners with us are doing to achieve a world with zero hunger, to eradicate hunger and malnutrition in the world? So we teamed up with, to shine a spotlight on these issues, to really make people understand what are the consequences of so many people, not just children, 3 million children dying, but there are a staggering 821 million people who go to bed hungry every night. Again, totally crazy in a world of plenty where we have enough for everyone. So shining that spotlight so that people understand and will understand the urgency also of dealing with these challenges and dealing with these problems and making sure that people have all across the world have access to the food they need, not just to fill their stomachs, but also live active and healthy lives. It turned into, we have worked with SAVA, which is the global network for cinema advertising companies, national cinema advertising companies. We have worked with them now for the second year in a row to build an ad, to create an ad that could run in cinemas across the world. The challenge that we have in humanitarian organizations like ours, who are 100% voluntarily funded, who run with an overhead of 6.5% only, is that everything we do needs to be pro bono or low bono or no bono. We cannot really afford to put a lot of money into expensive campaigns. And you could also say, can we justify it? Of course, it costs money to inform, it costs money to raise money, but this has been done purely pro bono by a lot of different partners. SAVA, the umbrella organization, all the national movie advertising companies. In Norway it's Karpa, in Denmark it's Dansk Reklamefilm. A lot of partners came together to help us produce this. I think the only cost we had was a relatively low cost for the post-production of the ad, but that was it. Everything else was done pro bono. And that's of course a challenge to have to work under these circumstances. But fortunately, there are so many great people around the world who are lending us their voices or their warm hands or money or trust and help us do the work that we do in World Food Programme. We provide food every single day for 80 million people, more than 80 million people, actually 87 million people in more than 80 countries across the world. And we do that in really sort of complex settings such as South Sudan and Nigeria and Yemen and Syria and elsewhere. So we could never do this if we didn't have generous governments who supported us, private sector partners who would lend their expertise to us, private people like you, movie directors, production companies, etc., who would lend their resources to us and to the fight against hunger. So this ended up in a 60-minute or 60-second cinema advertising about this price of world hunger, because it's not just, it's really, the staggering fact is the 3 million children who die every year from hunger. But hunger and malnutrition also has consequences that goes beyond that and that are equally brutal. If you don't have access to appropriate or adequate nutrition in early childhood, if from the moment you're conceived till you turn 2 years old, if you do not have access to that nutrition you need to develop and grow, you will be crippled for life. It's not just physically, it's also cognitively. So your brain develops by 80% in the first 2 years, or the first 1,000 days, which we count from conception till you turn 2 years old. And if you're not having the appropriate or the adequate nutrition at that really crucial window of opportunity, you will never be able to recuperate the damage that was inflicted on your brain due to malnutrition. And even if at a later stage in life you're lucky to get access to better nutrition, that will not help you because you will be impaired. So apart from the people or the children who die from hunger, you have generations and generations who grow up and will never be able to meet their full potential because they have not had the fortune of living in a country or a region where there was full access to adequate food and nutrition. So what we see now in Yemen, what we see in Sudan, South Sudan and elsewhere, is it's not just done with the conflict ending, whenever that might happen, inshallah. And it's not just, it doesn't stop there. It goes on in generation after generation. It will be children who grew up under the conflict who will never reach their full potential. They'll never be able to contribute fully to a society as people in our parts of the world, I presume, are, because we have been fortunate enough to be born in places where we had access to the resources we need. So this is really also to make people aware of that part of the equation. So we teamed up with, as I said, with SAVA, the Global Trade Organization for Cinema Advertising, and showed this ad in movie theaters in 30 countries around the world. The director is called John Haggerty, and he's from the Garage Soho, and the director is Nick Gordon. So they gave us for free their creative capacities and helped us conceptualize and come up with the idea for the spot, and helped us produce it and helped us edit and everything connected to it. So and this is the second year we work with Sir John Haggerty on this campaign. And the idea, I hope we can show it again if you want, but the idea is that you have these kids and then one by one they disappear, and of course it's illustrating the fact that 3 million children die every year. Just a few results. We don't have the results for 2019, it's still too early, but we have some results from 2018 from the ad that we ran at the time. It was more focused on potential. I mean, if you can go and Google it, Sava and Miriam, and you'll find it. It was about this loss of potential that I talked about, where if you are fortunate not to die, but you will still suffer immensely from not having access to nutrition. But the result is there was a 40% increase in the knowledge about WFP in the US. And there was an increased download of a app. We have a fundraising app which is called Share the Meal. There was actually a 38% increase. If you wish to see it, not necessarily donate, no pressure, but you can download Share the Meal on your smartphone. And once you have sort of registered your profile and tapped in your credit card information, then every time you go to the canteen or every time you go to a restaurant and you feel, okay, why not invite this invisible guest to the table, you can go to the Share the Meal and you can just tap and you will add 3 kroner, which equals a meal for a hungry child somewhere in the world. We do it actually here in the canteen. We collaborate with Fatser, who is the canteen service provider, and they have added a button to their cash register. So every time we sign out on our lunch, we can choose to add those 3 kroners extra so that we invite an invisible child for a meal. And so far we have raised, I think, more than 48 million meals through this fundraising app, which is also an app to create awareness about the challenges, the problems, the issues around hunger and malnutrition in the world. And it looks like this. And then I promised, I'm not really sure how we are on time, Mikkel, are we fine? Okay, good. I promised also to talk a bit about, or I was encouraged to talk about what can be done on different scales. This is a global campaign. These are highly esteemed professionals who help us. But what can be done on other levels? An example is, this is also on a global level. The global goals, the 17 global goals that was adopted in 2015 by the UN General Assembly in New York. 193 heads of states signed the global goals. And it was a sort of a, I don't know how many pages long document about all these intents to change the world and to create the world we want by 2030. That's really the issue. Governments, private sector, individuals came together in years prior to 2015. I don't know how familiar you are, but from 2000 to 2015, we had the Millennium Development Goals. There were 8 goals. They were pretty much conceived in the UN by Kofi Annan. It wasn't really a universal agenda. It was more. It didn't include the entire world. It was more directed towards the developing part of the world. And since business was not finished, through the Millennium Development Goals, one of the aims were to halve hunger, eradicate inequality and poverty, etc. But the goals that was set in 2000 were not reached. So prior to 2015, which was the end station for the Millennium Development Goals, prior to 2015, there was a global consultation on all kinds of levels, like governments and private sector and interest groups, NGOs, and individuals as well. We had the opportunity to go on a website called The World We Want and put in our priorities among a lot of different goals. What was it that I, from here, my perspective, thought was the most important? Was it climate? Was it hunger? Was it education? Was it sanitation? Whatever. So everyone had a say in this process, and we are all signatory to the Sustainable Development Goals and the Agenda 2030. And 17 goals came out of it. But in order to make those relatable and to make them actionable, you don't expect people to sit down and write a 20-page or a 30-page long document and sort of try to extract, so what is it exactly that I need to do, or what is the core of this goal. So actually, I don't know if you're familiar with Jakob Trollbäck, a Swedish guy, the designer, copywriter, based in New York. Jakob and Sir Richard Curtis, who is the movie director, Love Actually, 4 Weddings and a Funeral, Notting Hill, and etc. He took it upon him through his project Everyone to ensure in the years leading up to 2015 that everyone would know about the Sustainable Development Goals and the Agenda 2030. Okay, if we are to reach the world we want by 2030, we need everyone to know about them. We need everyone to act accordingly, and we need everyone to put as much pressure as they can on everyone, like their government, their parliamentarians, the companies that they buy from, etc., etc. And I mean, we don't use single plastic or single-use cups anymore, because we will get because of course that's what we do, but also this is what you want us to do. You will get really upset and start tweeting if we were to have water from plastic cups or single-use cups for coffee. So, you have such a power, it's unbelievable. We have as consumers, we have as voters, etc. So Richard Curtis and Jakob Trollbäck got together, and you have most likely seen these icons, for the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. The color palette, you will see, if you see Danish politicians talk on television, you will see them all wear this brush or badge. You have it. Yeah? Wow, great. So this colorful, and sometimes people are like, what kind of loge is that? Or is it something LGBT kind of, 17 development goals. So they came up with this design, and it's been a game breaker. It's been crazy how it's been catching on, because there was a creative, there was a relatable, there was an actionable way of communicating the 17 development goals. And actually in Denmark there was a research done recently that knowledge about the Sustainable Development Goals are at, I think it was 63% actually among Danes, which is really, really impressive. I mean, I think for the Millennium Development Goal, I don't think we ever came above 10% or something. So that's really within 5 years, that has really helped a lot. Another example that I'll show you is a student collaboration called Counting the Beans. It's students from the School of Media and Journalism here in Copenhagen, Amdrup, whom we work with every year, and they get assigned to different clients, private sector, organizations like ours, and they produce a video, a social media PSA, public service announcement. And we have worked with them for many years, and sometimes we've been able to use it, and sometimes not. But still, it's an important part important thing for us to be part of. And in 2018, we had a collaboration with DMJX for the counting. It was called Counting the Beans, and I'll show you the video, the short video just after. But we put it out on social media on our own WFP platforms, global, Nordic, everywhere. But even beyond that, it went sort of ballistic. It was on the UN official Twitter account and Facebook page and everywhere. But just counting our own platforms, it reached more than 238,000 impression, was viewed more than 22,000 times, and received 4,800 engagement. And the same numbers for Facebook. Reached 327,000 people, watched over 100,000 times, and received more than 3,700 likes, comments, shares, and whatnot. And it was produced by 5 students from the Danish Media and Journalism School. And this is something, again, we are voluntarily funded. We don't get these core contributions. So we have to fight for every single krona that we spend somewhere in the world. If we don't have the money, we cannot feed the people. It's simple as that. So this is something totally pro bono that we work with. And this student production, we had to put in time to sort of course, mentor and collaborate with the group. But our effort was really limited. And what we ended up with was a video that reached this crazy, had this crazy reach. And I'll just show it to you now. So this was actually based on a report that is called Counting the Beans that compare or sort of look at the comparative prices. So if you were born in Sweden and with the income that you have in Sweden, what would you pay for a simple daily meal compared to if you were in South Sudan? And with the income that you have on average, what would that represent in terms of daily income? And as you saw, it was 155% for South Sudan, whereas it was 0.27% for a person in Sweden. And it's a very complicated report. It's very complicated to communicate. Even we struggled, even if the report was ours, we really struggled. But this group of journalists, they really sort of cracked the code and came up with this one. So it's still, it's still one of our, last year it was our top performing content. It's still among the top 10, even 2 years later, content. And the reach and the impact it has, it goes beyond words. It cannot be overestimated. So this is how we work with different sectors. We work with technical companies and big companies like MasterCard or Maersk for logistics, MasterCard for payment systems. But we also work with creatives to help us communicate and spread the word and make sure that there continues to be public support, and we continue to mobilize will to support the work that we and others do to achieve the world we want, which is a world, among other things, with zero hunger. So I think that was it. And I think I spent more than my allocated time.
That's fine.
Okay, good.
So
Sorry.
a round of applause.
Good.